Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle to triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Hello, and thank you for joining us today for this episode of Her Version. I want to thank everybody who is already jumping on live. Hello, hello, hello. If you could do us a huge favor, and if you could share this video wherever you are watching it at, so we can get more eyes and more ears on the awesome content we're about to share today. We have had over 400 women grace this stage, and we are adding to that list today. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experience comes from listening to other people's stories. Today, I'm speaking with an amazing woman named Nicole Elliott. Nicole is a conversion copywriter and message strategist who specializes in human-sounding, non-salesy sales copy for entrepreneurs. She began her writing career in academia, but got sick of its painfully dry, stuffy, drained of all personality approach to writing. Yes, that was beautiful. She found copywriting and the chance to write like a human and never looked back. Today, she cooks up copy with her 3-step human-first messaging approach to help clients nail down their brand voice, capture their audience's actual words with extensive voice of customer research, and strategically blend the two together for copy that connects and converts. Welcome, lady.
Thank you very much for the lovely intro, Sabrina. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. You know, I always appreciate the ladies who understand the importance of getting onto shows, getting onto podcasts, sharing their journey, their story, their inspiring thoughts, the things that they're doing today, because it really gives inspiration. It really gives hope. It really gives other females out there the opportunity to think outside of where they're at right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, my story had tons of ups and downs, but I know it was really always very reassuring to hear from others. And
yes, exactly. And that's what this is all about is, you know, when I was in my darkest time, when I was in the slum of it, which we're all in and out of it, right? Just because I'm out doesn't mean I'm not going to be back in at some point. But it's always nice to recognize that we're not the only ones. You know, there's other people out there that are going through not only dark stuff, but just similar stuff. You know, sometimes we think that we're unique as humans and a woe is me as humans. And when you really start to look around and you really start to listen to stories, you start to recognize that we're really not all that different.
Yeah, it helps you find like the threads of unity rather than just the differences, you know?
Yes, 100. So we love telling stories here on this podcast, and I would love for you to, you know, share a journey, share a story, share a challenge that you went through in your life, big or small, that pivoted you, that changed you, and what did you learn, you know, from that journey or that story?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I was listening to your interview with Mindy Scarlett the other day. I believe she's the ghostwriter and publisher who helps business owners become authors. Yeah, she's great. But one thing she mentioned that really resonated with me was the difference between being self-employed versus being a business owner. So I thought maybe I could talk about how I made that pivot in my own life, because it took me much longer than it should have, I'll admit, but perhaps it's helpful to someone else out there. So as Sabrina said before, just to give a bit of context, these days I'm a conversion copywriter and messaging strategist. And that's something I've been doing for the last 8 years or so, which is still crazy for me to believe. But I was very much a reluctant business owner at the beginning. So this was definitely something that I just fell into. So I got my start in writing for a living in the academic writing world. I studied English as well as Spanish in college. And so when I was there, I became a private tutor for academic writing. So I did that for a while. I was good at it. I understood the structure, but as you said in my intro, academic writing is pretty soulless. It's drained of personality. It's just about who can fit the highest concentration of smart sounding words in a sentence type of thing. So I left from that and I became an ESL teacher, so an English as a second language instructor. And I taught in a few different places around the world. I had a teaching internship in Spain. I got certified to teach in Peru. I taught in South Korea. I also got married somewhere in there, but we'll set that aside so the story doesn't get too long and unwieldy. But then my husband and I had plans to move back to the US for a little bit, but we knew it was just going to be temporary, even though we had plans to go to Europe. And I knew I wanted to get back into writing, but to be honest, I also just wanted some type of work I could bring with me. So I did a bit of Googling and I came across this thing called copywriting. And I really resonated with the fact that copywriting was all about writing for the human on the other end and considering their pain points, what's keeping them up at night, their desires, their state of mind, their own journey, it was all about the human and all about connection. So I essentially learned everything I could about copywriting, managed to get some clients pretty early on just by nature of having good samples, despite my lack of experience. But one thing I will say, while I was able to deliver good work, I basically made all the possible mistakes early on you can make. I mean, I didn't bother with contracts, which meant I sometimes got screwed over with payment, which is, don't be like me. I didn't market myself in any way. I really just wanted to be in my little corner and write and strategize. And I had this really strong mental block against being businessy or salesy. I also took on terrible clients. I said yes to every project, which meant I was working for people I honestly didn't like for far too many hours for not nearly enough pay. And I just had no boundaries. And it's kind of a mess overall. So of course, I also had to pay the bills. So on the side, I was also teaching ESL. I did some subbing, which if you have ever been a sub before or anyone listening, kudos to you because it is such a hard job and I would never do it again.
Wow.
And I was also a sample girl at the grocery store, which is actually a lot of fun because I got to keep the samples at the end of the day. So fancy cheese day was a good time. So anyways, I think, there's a lot to be said for kind of paying your dues as a new freelancer, contractor, entrepreneur, business owner, however you identify at the beginning, but I'm sure I could have found an easier way. And so this go with the flow approach worked for a while. I got lucky in that, once I got some referrals, I just got more and more and more. So in my second year, I started being able to work with some larger clients and clients that I actually really enjoyed working with. But then my father died in a really tragic sudden accident. He was hit by a drunk driver on a Monday afternoon at 1 p.m. So obviously not something anyone could predict. And then there was, some follow-up time spent in the hospital, wondering if he was going to make it or not. So as you can imagine, pretty traumatic. I couldn't watch movies with hospital scenes for years, honestly. And there were lots of emotional and personal shifts and pivots from that. We'll stick to just the business pivots for now. But essentially any progress I had made in my business was more or less reverted overnight. Because my father, he was always the biggest proponent for my writing. He always made fun of me for being an English major, but eventually he came around and I sent some projects I was proud of and he was very supportive. But I also ended up losing all my clients because I just couldn't, the brain fog and grief was so intense.
Yeah.
My brain is everything in the type of work I do. So I couldn't deliver my projects. I was just such a mess that I basically just refunded all of my clients for anything they paid up front, ignored all of the hours I'd put in, and just kept going. And then to make matters worse, this was just before an overseas move to Sweden. So I ended up postponing that a little bit and stayed in Minnesota, where I'm originally from, for some time. But then I landed in Sweden, where I didn't know anyone. It was a brand new country. My husband was doing his master's, so he was gone a lot. And so I was spending my time working at home, panicking because I lost all my clients, panicking because I couldn't get my brain to work and do the projects that I still had, and panicking because I couldn't get new ones. It was just a pretty terrible circumstance overall. Then if we jump forward a few years ago, things are going much better. But then the pandemic hits and I lose all my clients again. And so this was when I realized that I had to be more intentional and purposeful in my business. Because until this point, I had still very much just gone with this go with the flow approach, and it had worked. I generated enough income, but it was just very passive. And so I wanted to be, as I said, just more intentional and active in choosing who I wanted to work with and in what capacity. So this kind of launched me on a whole a bit of like, there's definitely some personal development in there, because really stepping into the identity of business owner is something that's highly personal, but obviously a ton of professional development as well. So I joined like a Build Your Copywriting Business program, which is really impactful. I finally launched a website that, I had a designer. It captured my voice. I figured out all my packages. I honed in who I wanted to work with. I started going on podcasts like this and doing more networking and building relationships and doing outreach rather than just letting things come my way. Not to say, it hasn't been perfectly smooth sailing since then. I will admit that I had a bit of a confidence crisis at the end of last year where things really slowed down despite the fact I felt like I was doing absolutely everything right. But that's just really the nature of working for yourself, and there's not much you can do to avoid it. But I will say this overall mental pivot of moving from a freelancer and just someone who writes and gets paid to an actual business owner made a really big difference. Sorry, that was a very long story, but...
I love it. Absolutely. Listen, I want to ask a few things as far as some of the things that you talked about. First one being, because I feel like this is a thing. And I love that you listened to Mindy's episode about the mental block between self-employed and business owner. What was your specific block? Why were you dancing around being a business owner yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think one side of it was just by nature of being someone who always identified as more of a creative, I'm a writer, I'm an artiste type of thing.
Okay.
I just had a hard time, it sounds so silly, I know, but a hard time reconciling that with the actual need to be a business owner. And I think probably a second part of it was definitely a confidence issue and a good bit of imposter syndrome as well. Like I didn't want to be visible. I really wanted to be behind the scenes. I didn't want to be actively outreaching because I'm also quite introverted. And I've been doing a lot of practice in public speaking over the years to kind of overcome that, which has made a big difference for sure. But it was just so far outside of my comfort zone. It was just, and also just not knowing what to do. I didn't have, my background was in academic writing and ESL. Like I had no reference point of what even went into being a business owner.
Yeah. So how did you start kind of recognizing or, becoming self-aware that was something that was necessary for you to do in order to reach the next level of money that's necessary to actually sustain doing what you ultimately want to be doing instead of doing these other little side things on the side?
Mm-hmm.
Do you reading books? Were you listening to somebody? Who helped you kind of pivot?
Yeah, I think it was something, I probably wasn't thinking too much during my first year or two because I was very much just in keep my head above water type of thing, just learning, just trying to figure out how to even, potentially write for a living. Like the fact of it actually being a business owner situation wasn't even a consideration. I'm not sure if I could pinpoint something specifically. Actually, maybe I can. If I think about most of my clients are primarily entrepreneurs, small business owners. So I actually learned a lot from them over the years. Like I would say I probably learned just as much from them as they learned from me, just by nature of being in that environment. You just end up soaking up so much of their energy and seeing all the different things they're trying. I definitely continued, as I said, with this go with the flow approach for far longer than I needed to. I think there was a lot of fear. I think there was a lot of me just being like, oh, this is yeah. And then, as I said, I mean, when the pandemic hit, all the clients disappeared, and that was really like a good kick in the ass for me. Like, Nikki,
Yeah.
okay, or Nicole, also go by Nikki. So take your pick, I guess. That I needed to actually act on kind of all of these things I've been absorbing over the years.
Yeah. What is I love this saying that you said you have to, or not you have to, but paying your dues as far as jumping into entrepreneurship. Because yes, on my end, I mean, very similar, everything from dumpster diving to, selling on offer eBay, thrift store shop flipping, house cleaning, babysitting. I mean, there's a plethora of things that I was doing early on in order to make ends meet with the business that I was running. What's your thoughts on that as far as, staying in that too long? Because it's something that is sort of necessary, but then I get what you're saying, like not too long.
I mean, at some point it feels like it's just unavoidable. Like, I don't honestly know how else I could have. Yeah, that's a quite difficult question. I mean, I don't feel like, the easy thing would have been to do is, for example, invest in help or a mentor early on. But I didn't feel like, A, I could justify the cost of that, or B, that I deserved it. That I think I had it in my mind that I had to pay these dues. I'm not sure if that's a healthy mindset. I don't know if that's needed. Yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on it? Am I allowed to ask questions?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, same. I think the thing that I really liked about the way that you worded that was, yes, pay your dues, but then also kind of step into your self-worth and step into or out of the imposter syndrome as quickly as possible in order to raise your prices, in order to get more organized, in order to get more structured. I think sometimes because we're afraid to allow our voices to be heard, we stay small. So then you have to do that side stuff in order to sustain life, because we live on an economic planet. So you need money. So, I mean, the thing that I would say is to not allow yourself to stay, in that realm of imposter syndrome for any longer than you have to. I mean, there comes a point where you have to make a decision. You're either going to fulfill this vision, this desire, or you're not.
Yeah, beautifully put. I think it is about just taking that leap, even when the imposter syndrome's there. Because imposter syndrome, at least for me, never really goes away. It's always, some new challenge, something new pops up. Like when I first started speaking on podcasts, I was terrified. And then it comes right back. So
yeah, definitely. But it's stepping into those new things. So you weren't doing that. And then you recognized it, you saw it, you were self-aware of it, and then you took a step into it. And now as you're doing more and more and more, it becomes more comfortable. I mean, I remember when I would have to, for this, I would have to sit like 30 minutes prior and get everything set up and make sure everything was right and my notes, and there'd be this whole to-do before the guest actually came on, so I would feel comfortable. Now, literally 30 seconds before I go live.
Yeah, I mean, when you do 5 days a week,
like not even in the room, I'm over somewhere else, just doing something completely different off the wall. And then literally 30 seconds before I'm supposed to like jump on with the person, and I'm totally good. Like good to go. I could do it in my sleep. I could do it with my eyes closed. It's not even an issue because of the repetitiveness.
Yeah, we can get used to just about anything.
But until you do that hard thing, right? So like until you started doing podcasting, it seemed impossible, but then you did one.
Yeah, no, totally true.
Yeah. I love that. What's the number one lesson that you've learned about life as you've kind of gone along?
The number one lesson. Oh gosh. I would say, I mean, both for life as in business, there's no one way to do anything. I think, like, if we first talk about it from a business perspective, just since that's what we've already been talking about, that was definitely one thing that held me back at the beginning from, like more actively marketing myself or stepping into being more of a business owner, is that I just didn't know what to do. And you have all of these like gurus online telling you this is, the must do, the proven 5-step secret to, 6 figures, what have you. But I think, I would always have people tell me, you have to be on social media. You can't have a successful business if you're not on social media. And I don't like using social media for my business. So it just prevented me from taking any sort of action, because it was just like, well, I don't want to do the one thing that everyone's telling me. So I think that's always helpful for me to remember, like by nature of having your own business, you can, obviously, sometimes there's just things you have to do. Like I have to deal with my finances. I can't avoid that. But you do have the power, or at least you can start taking steps to give yourself that power to kind of form your own path. And I feel like that's true as well for life. A lot of people, we grow up with a very like clear image in minds of what societal expectations are, especially as women, for example. You maybe finish high school, you go to college, you get a good job, you get married, you start having kids. And then, stay in the same job until retirement, and then you enjoy your life with your 2 weeks of vacation. And if that's, a type of life that you're interested in, that's great. Go for it if that's what brings you joy. But there's more options. There's always different ways. Like my husband and I live a bit of a non-traditional lifestyle with moving around and going to different countries, and we don't have kids and all that. So there's no one way. That was a roundabout way to answer with a very short, there's no way.
That's great. When you think about your journey as far as, schooling, corporate, freelance, self-employed to business owner, what do you think were your like steps? What were the steps that you had to take mentally, or even physically, to kind of transition yourself from one state of mind to another state of mind? What did your personal journey look like to do that, the steps that you had to take?
I don't know if I would be able to outline really, really specific steps, because it feels like it all kind of happens as a spectrum. Or there were, moments where I like considered doing it, but then something else happens, and then I ended up.
What were those things?
Always coming in with the tough questions, Sabrina. To give just kind of a more general answer, I think just taking on one of my overall approaches to life is to take on things that challenge me. So things like, moving to a new country, things like becoming a certified ESL teacher and trying to teach children for a year, only to realize that's not for me. I only teach adults now. It's a little more my style. Things like despite the fact that I was writing all sorts of things for clients, websites, emails and such for years, it was actually really, really uncomfortable and really hard for me to write stuff for my own business. Like it's only relatively recently that I've started emailing my list consistently, which is embarrassing, but I've had really good feedback from it so far. So I think it's just generally, if something feels challenging, then that's a step to go towards. I realize that's not necessarily a specific answer for you, but that's
what you've done. Like you specifically have done. When you see that there's an area of which you can improve, you step into that.
Yeah, I try to. It's not always as simple. Sometimes it takes a bit longer than it should, but as much as I can. Yeah.
That's great. Who taught you to do that?
That's another great question. I'm not sure if there's anyone specifically I could point to. I definitely learned a lot over the years from my clients, just by nature of all of them being very entrepreneurial, very like go-getters in a way. They tend to have they're a lot less risk averse than I may be, perhaps. I would say my husband is very inspirational in that regards. By the time we had met, he had already been living overseas and traveling and working in all these different types of jobs all over the world for years. So I think I already kind of had something instinctual within me. I like to learn. I like to do new things, but definitely coming together with him just grew that.
Was that scary? Have you traveled before?
I had, yeah, actually.
Okay.
Well, now I'm glad I get to share this story, to be honest. I was traveling by myself when I met him. We stayed in the same hostel. We were both in Croatia. Like I was backpacking for 6 weeks. I was only 19. I was backpacking by myself in Europe, and he was traveling as well. And I was sitting in the hostel, like common room. I was reading a book because I didn't want to talk to someone, but he's from Brazil. So he's always talking to people. He came and said hi, and now we've been together 10 years. So life's full of surprises.
You were traveling on your own at 19?
I was, yeah.
Why?
Why? Well, there's probably a long roundabout way that I could go about answering that, but just generally, I mean, it's about the challenge. I like doing new things from a very young age. Like I had this dream of living overseas. I don't necessarily know where it came from, to be honest, because it wasn't something that was normal in my family. I didn't have any friends. I wish I could pinpoint to where it was, but so basically as soon as I was able to make it happen, I made it happen.
So you just packed up and you're like, I'm going into the world, not just like the US, the world. And then did you sustain yourself, or were your parents kind of like giving you some allowances or something? How did you do that financially?
Yeah, no, that's a fair question. I was really lucky that my parents helped me through school. And I also had some scholarships, and I finished college early. So I saved a lot of money just by nature of not being in school quite as long. But I was working like multiple jobs. When I was in college, I was working 3 jobs in order to make this type of thing possible. And this actually happened because I was studying in Spain beforehand. I did like a semester to learn Spanish and all that. And so I was like giving lessons on the side. But yeah, I can't pretend. I mean, obviously it's a huge leg up to be able to finish your college without being in debt, tons of debt. So I'm not going to pretend like there's not some serious privilege there for sure.
That is so cool. So where did you do your schooling at? What areas?
In Spain or throughout the US, or?
I don't know, like where your college,
well, I'm from Minnesota originally. So I went to the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. And so while I was there, I did most of my degree there. I just spent 1 semester in Spain.
Got it. Okay.
I guess I also got certified to teach in Peru.
How did you do that?
How?
Yeah.
I knew when I finished college, actually, I think I was still in college. You need a teaching English as a second language licensure in order to teach in other countries. So I found a program in Peru, saved up for it, and went for it. It was lovely. It was like a 1-month intense program. There was practical teaching hours, learned a lot, got to practice a lot of Spanish as well.
That is awesome. So then you're just hanging out at a hostel, reading a book, and then just some random dude comes up to you and is like, hey, girl.
Yeah, basically. And I can't believe I'm actually sharing this on a public platform that clients might listen to someday. But he invited me to go to a party that night with some Australians he had met. And I would never say yes to go to a party with a strange man. Like, that's something I would do. But for some reason, I got good vibes from him. And I think, like I said, he's from Brazil, but he also speaks Spanish. And so I got excited when I heard he spoke Spanish because I just finished studying. So I just wanted to speak all the Spanish. And I went with him. And then a few days later, we met up again in Budapest because we compared our travel schedules, had a really nice time there. 6 months later, he came to visit me in Minnesota in the winter, nonetheless.
Wow. So freaking fun.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been with you throughout this whole journey of writing and freelancing and business owner and imposter syndrome and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, he's been there every step of the way through the ups and downs for sure.
That is so cool. Very, very fun. So tell us a little bit about, exactly what you do. What is your business? And what do you do for your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you've said, I'm a conversion copywriter and messaging strategist. So to give you a bit of the elevator pitch, essentially I work with entrepreneurs, female founders, industry experts, small business owners who are really good at what they do, but they might be having a difficult time developing clear messaging around that, as well as copy, whether it's their website copy, the words on their website, on a landing page, email campaigns, video scripts, what have you. That is capturing their voice. That's a huge pain point I hear from clients. They just feel like, the way they speak and the way they write, there's a disconnect. Captures their story, and probably most importantly, actually resonates with their audience. So there's really kind of two sides of the coin to good copy that's going to connect as well as convert. And so that's capturing your voice to get your personality and let the world see who you are, but as well as having a deep understanding of your audience and the actual language they speak and, what's going through their head and all of that.
What do you teach as far as the importance of storytelling?
Mm-hmm. So I think, stories is just something that's really foundational to who we are as humans. Stories have been around for well before we were able to document it with any type of, writing system. And I think it's such a universal way to connect with people, whether it's a story that mirrors yours, or it can even be a story that's very different from yours, but you see bits of yourself, or you draw inspiration, or you build new ideas. I just think it's very important in life as well as in business. If you look at it from the perspective of writing copy, at the end of the day, this was actually another block for me to get over. So that could be something to address later. But people aren't just, especially if you're like the face of your business or you're a service provider, people don't just work with you or hire you strictly because of your skills. It's very much because of who you are as a person. So I think having your story, on your website, on your about page, told in a way that's really compelling, is super important, because it's going to make people resonate with you. It's going to help them connect with you, even if they've never met you. Sometimes I hop on sales calls with clients or consultation calls, and they'll reference something that they read in my about page. So they already feel like they know me a bit before they've hopped on. And it's a really, really powerful thing, for sure. As I'm sure you have an entire 5 episodes per week podcast dedicated to storytelling. So I don't need to be telling you all this.
Yeah, definitely. Why is the copy on websites so important? I guess, why is it important to hire somebody to do it versus doing it on your own?
Okay, sure. Well, I will say there are probably moments when it's not always right to hire a copywriter, but maybe we can get to that next. I think because your website, you've probably heard this before, but it's your online business card. It's your online salesperson. It's going to be the place where people come to see if you're legit, for them to come to see if they like you, for them to have an understanding of your services. So if there is any part of your website that is not very interesting to read, if the writing's a bit dull or unclear, people will just X off and just go elsewhere, because you don't want to make people work, when they land on a website. If they can't figure out where they're supposed to go, if they read through if you have your pages and still can't quite figure out what you can do for them, the pros and cons of the internet is that there's tons of options out there, so they can just hop off and go somewhere else.
Yep.
And just the power of copy generally, it can help, obviously, with connection, if you're adding more storytelling and elements of your personality. But if you're looking for more of the practical business side of things, it can help you get more people onto your email list. It can help you get more sales if you're selling a course. It can help you, if you want to speak on podcasts, the email you send out, that's copy too. Anytime you're trying to have people take any sort of action, you need good copy.
So all good stuff.
All good stuff, yeah.
All good stuff. For those that are watching live, thank you so much for being here. For those that are watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're at so we can send you some love. Nicole or Nikki, whoever is listening live right now or on the replay and they're resonating with you, your story, and what you do, where do you hang out? Where can people see you or follow you on social media?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't use a lot of social media for business purposes, but you are welcome to follow my personal account if you like. Maybe, Sabrina, you can add it to the description. It's primarily just travel pictures, I'll be honest. But I am on LinkedIn. So I think if you just probably go to my website, Nicole Elliott, Elliot with 2 L's and 2 T's, .co, you should find the link to my LinkedIn there on my contact and about page. Otherwise, I love emails. I love when people reach out to have virtual coffee chats and they want to talk about copy or entrepreneurship or being a digital nomad or language learning or just whatever. I love when people reach out. So
awesome. What are your big dreams for your business?
Mm-hmm. See, I knew you were going to ask this question because you always do. And I knew I was going to have somewhat of a hard time answering it. But if I were to just speak maybe a little easier just for my life, the overall lifestyle is the big dream is to visit every country in the world. I've made good progress so far, but fingers crossed that we'll continue doing so. As to my business, I would say that I'm finally, took a long time to get here, but at a point where I'm quite happy where I am. But I would say over the past year, I've been moving in a lot more into podcast and guest teaching. So I would definitely be interested in doing more of that because it lets me help other business owners grow their businesses with copy because it's so powerful. It's the foundation of everything, even if they don't work with me one-to-one.
Beautiful. And why do you do what you do?
I think there's something special about being able to use a skill that I have and have been able to develop over the years to help clients, like entrepreneurs, small business owners, founders, what have you, who are doing amazing things, to be able to continue doing those amazing things and to share what they're doing with the world, as well as make sure that others who they could potentially help know what it is that they're doing. And so, from the business side of things like that, from the really practical standpoint, that can help them get more right fit clients. It can help them convert more customers, more sales, reach more people, what have you. But from a personal standpoint, it's also been really rewarding watching the newfound confidence that a lot of my clients have after we've worked together on their messaging and copy, because they just feel so confident that their story has been captured, their message. They feel like they're able to connect with their readers. So I just think it's an honor to be able to use that skill to help others.
Yes. Closing thoughts before we wrap up.
Mm-hmm. So I know we've talked quite a bit about just overall business and entrepreneurship and all that. So I want the closing thought maybe to be a bit more on copywriting and messaging, since we didn't get to chat too much on that. If there's anyone out there who's like DIYing their copy, I do want to say that I know it can be intimidating. I found it quite intimidating for myself as well. But at the end of the day, if you're struggling to write up your website, your email campaigns, sales pages, what have you, I would say at the end of the day, it's just about capturing, connecting with the humanness. So from your own perspective, that'll be making sure you're capturing your voice and putting your personality into your copy. I mean, you can literally record yourself speaking out loud to see how you describe what you do, if that helps. But also making sure you're thinking of it in terms of capturing the humanity of your readers, since they're both very, very important.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing with us. For those of you that resonated with Nicole and all of the goodness that she shared today, make sure you check out her website at nicoleelliott.co.
With 2 T's.
2 L's, 2 T's.
Mm-hmm.
And her LinkedIn profile should be in her website. It's also clickable wherever you're watching us at her website. So you can go on, browse, drop a message, say hello to her, reach out, and inquire more about what she does. We love to connect people here on this platform in order to make sure that we all continue to rise. Thank you so much for joining us here. For those of you that are on live right now, thank you for being here. For those of you watching on the replay, Make sure you hashtag replay wherever you're watching us at so we can send you some love. This community is expanding every single day and is filled with females who are striving to do better than they did yesterday. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. If you have an amazing story to share of struggle to triumph, be sure to reach out to me here or at herversion.life. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I am so grateful to be here sharing a platform that allows individuals to share their truth in order to inspire and